You're listening to the Key on Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Vince Mckee. Our guest tonight, Mike Goldberg of the MMA world, currently with Bellator. Before that, the UFC, and someone who has Northeast Ohio roots right here in North Olmsted, Ohio, where this broadcast is taking place. Sit tight, put your feet up, and grab something cold to drink. Up next, Mike Goldberg. On the hotline now, Mike Goldberg from the MMA world, Bellator, his current place. And I'll tell you, before we put this guy on the phone here, I was just at our old alma mater tonight about an hour ago, running around the track. They were having football practice, and everything just felt like we were at home. And certainly fingers crossed that we get some high school football in a few weeks. But North Olmsted, where I am from, is known for their hockey. And on the phone with me now, not only is this guy one of the top MMA analysts in the game, but he's also one of the greatest hockey players to ever come out of Northeast Ohio. He is Mike Goldberg. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vince. I appreciate it. That is very high praise. But I will humbly say that the line of Goldberg, Browski, and Weisbarth is still number one all time in North Olmsted history. Now, my brother and, Keith Sabin and some of his line mates will say, well, we played Olmsted Falls all the time. And, they'll give all these kind of excuses to why Brow and Barth and I lit it up, and we shoot them down right away, obviously. But, you can't pick your opponents. You can pick the top of the net, and that's what our line did. So I appreciate the kind words, buddy.
Oh, absolutely. And, before we jump into all that good MMA stuff, I got to throw it at you, man. You grew up here in Northeast Ohio, a little bit of Cincy, but mostly here in the Cleveland area. I know you played for North Olmsted. We just talked about it. You went on to the University of Miami, and I want to say they used to be called the Redmen. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Now the Red Hawks, and then you go off to from there to do your stuff. But I guess what I'm saying is Northeast Ohio roots, and here you are, a San Jose Sharks fan. How the hell did that come about?
All right. Well, it started this way. First of all, as the T-shirts said when I was in school, Miami is in Ohio, damn it. And so the University of Miami, Mr. Mckee, is in South Florida. Miami University is in Oxford, Ohio. And I am a Redskin, not a Red Hawk, as it is now. And I think, wasn't it St. John's who changed to the Redmen?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Or they went to the Red Storm or something, and now the Redskins are doing it. And University of North Dakota changed their name, but yes, I was a Redskin, class of 86, which makes me older than you. I'll be nice to myself here. And, had a blast down there, interned at Channel 5 in Cincinnati. We grew up being North Olmsted kids in orange and black in basically Flyers colors. We grew up Flyers fans. Yep. And I was born in 1964, so if anybody knows their hockey and does the math, I was 10, 11 years old during the heyday of the Broad Street Bullies, and I was the captain. And so I wore number 16, Bobby Clark, baby. And my favorite player growing up, and still my favorite all-time Flyer, my second favorite would be Coyotes head coach Rick Tocchet. Had his credit card. I think it was a PNC Bank credit card at one point. But Clarkie was the guy, and so I wore number 16 my entire life. My younger brother, Todd, who was the class of 87 at North Olmsted, wore 16. My son wore 16. And in men's league, which I'll get to the Sharks because we actually have Sharks colors now for men's league, Cole kept 16, and I went to 48 for Tomas Hertl because he always smiles, and I think he's awesome. Personality and a great player. So we were big-time Flyers fans. I remember being very young and doing my first book report on Bobby Orr, Perry Sound, Ontario. Second one was on Bobby Clark, Flin Flon, Manitoba. And I went running in to talk to my mom. And, maybe I was in fourth grade or, third or fourth grade. I'm like, Mom, what, son? I go, Mom, how do I get diabetes? And she gave me this look. Exactly, Vince. She gives me this look. She goes, son, what are you talking about? I go, Mom, Bobby Clark is diabetic. And he is my favorite player. So I want to be like Bobby Clark. And so she got a chuckle out of it. And then when I got my front teeth knocked out up in the icebox in Toledo as a bantam, I begged my mom not to get them fixed, and she didn't buy into that one either. But that would be the story of the Flyers. And the transition to the Sharks is really through friendships. I was very close to their longtime analyst, Drew Remenda, when I was in the league for all those years, ESPN, the Red Wings, a bit with the Canucks, and then my 3 seasons with the Minnesota Wild, because Drew is a martial artist. He has a lot of black belts and a lot of different disciplines. So he was one of the few guys that we kind of talked, MMA with. And over time, Drew and I were great friends, and I knew Brent Burns from his rookie year in Minnesota. And Drew called me one night, and it was a huge fight. And he said, hey, Joe Thornton and the boys, they want to come to the UFC on Saturday. Can you make it happen? He goes, they're more than willing to pay. Can you make it happen? I'm like, yeah. So I hit our ticket guy and made it happen. And Jumbo, Burnsy, Logan Couture, and Jason Demers all came to the fight. JD, now a Coyote. And Jumbo is just one of the nicest, humblest human beings in the history of life. And he said, and I quote, we are going to make it up to you the San Jose way. And so Cole and I, when Cole was little, we would go to San Jose for like 2 games and 3 nights. They'd have us go to the locker room in the morning. We would go to lunch with the boys, and team lunches are, they're kind of sacred, but they invited Cole and I. Sure, Cole, like at the, at the little spaghetti bar, sitting between Joe Pavelski and Joe Thornton. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good moment. Snap, snap on the iPhone. And then they had Cole and I skate in the afternoon, and we played crossbar against Drew and one of the video guys, not to get our picture taken coming out of the Shark's head. And then we just went on and went down to the room and had all kinds of great times, and it's only grown from there. And that's our love for the Sharks. It's through personal relationships. A little easier to be a fan of a West Coast team when I live in Phoenix. And it's hard not to root for Jumbo. And he's obviously a Hall of Famer, but he's even more than a Hall of Famer when it comes to being a human being.
And a follow-up question to that, just I don't have it written down, but I don't care. I'm asking anyways. We're gonna talk. we're gonna talk about this in a second. Covering the Red Wings and covering the Bulls and announcing with the Red Wings and all that good stuff. But just as a father myself, I get it, and it's ironic, man, because I was literally just minutes ago up at North Olmsted High School walking around the track. The coach recognizes me, and I'm talking to a local high school football coach, and I feel like a celebrity because somebody knows who I am in front of my daughter, and it's like, wow. For you, though, on a much, much bigger scale, like in the quiet moments when you're trying to fall asleep or you're on a long car ride or a long plane ride, do you ever just close your eyes and think, like, holy shit, like, I can't believe my life?
Yes, absolutely. And if there's ever a day that I don't, then I need to smack myself in the back of the head. It doesn't mean I haven't worked hard, doesn't mean I haven't had to dig deep, doesn't mean I haven't fallen into some huge potholes and had to climb back up. But yeah, in the big picture, Vince, I absolutely realize what my perseverance and hard work has turned into, and that so many would dream to have the opportunity to do maybe one trip that I've been able to do hundreds of over the years, be it, hockey or follow Michael Jordan directly as a sideline reporter back in the day, or, MMA around the world, ACC basketball. Yeah, I definitely do realize what I've been able to do in life. But the best moments for me are when I can share them. Like taking my dad September 11th, 1985, on a 2-1 pitch from Eric Shaw at 8:01 p.m., taking my father to Riverfront so he could see Pete Rose break Ty Cobb's record.
Yep.
That means everything to me. Tony Orlando, of all people, Uncle Tony as I call him now, tie a yellow ribbon. Tony is a huge UFC, Bellator, MMA fan. He's also, which shocks me, he's a Goldberg fan. So I helped Tony get some tickets, and Uncle Tony wants to pay me back. I'm friends with his son, John. I go, just have your dad sing like Pat Dita instead of Candida into a phone, and my mom would go crazy. John says, I got one better. Your mom just needs to fly to Vegas this date, and everything else will be taken care of. So John picked her up. She had a suite at the hotel where Tony was performing, went backstage. Actually, she met Demi Lovato's mom backstage. They all had dinner together, and we've since seen Tony on other opportunities. And we were at a Tony Orlando concert, and I'm with my mom, and Tony gives me a shout out. And I just looked at my mom, Vince. I'm like, okay, of all the things you thought your kid might achieve in life, I'm guessing you never thought that Tony Orlando would give your son a shout out. So, that part is obviously extremely meaningful to me. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the Joe Thorntons and many others like them of the world, I truly judge them on how they treat my kids. Yep. Because, a lot of them will look at me as an equal because I'm so blessed to do what I do, Vince. And so who's going to take it that one step further? And many actors and actresses have done it for Kiera. I mean, all the way up to Dan Schneider, who's, basically the Spielberg of, kids television for Nickelodeon for a couple of decades. And all the way up to the Joe Thorntons and the Sidney Crosbys of the world, having time to meet Cole. And it's been amazing. And I really do base it on those things because it means a lot more to me. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It means a lot to me. But it means a lot more to me when I see those eyes get bright and I see my babies, my daughter and my son, 22 and 20, but always my babies, see them get spoiled by big time people. That is as meaningful to me as anything that I've ever experienced in my life.
Absolutely. And I totally get it. Before I move on to the next question, I do want to say, and we've talked about this before, but a couple of things. One, obviously, I had the pleasure to speak with you. I spoke with your dad twice, and you're just such a great man, and nothing but respect for his loss. And I've been praying for you. And two, I spoke with your mom too, who was absolutely hilarious. Told the story about when you had you're playing with some bullshit knife when you were a kid. And...
I had the machete, and my little brother Todd decided that he was going to be like his big brother. He grabbed a steak knife and goofing around, he stabbed himself in the leg. And then the Smith family, Mr. Smith, Will Smith, was the fire chief, and we lived right by Friendly's Ice Cream, so we were right across the street. And my mom comes home, and the ambulance is in front of the house. Thankfully, it was like 6 stitches to my dumbass brother Todd, but he's the one who stabbed himself with a knife. Somehow it was my fault.
That's all right.
It always is when you're the older kid. But yes, that's the knife story there.
Yeah, that just cracked me up. It's funny shit too, and I'll get on to the actual interview here. But seriously, you don't know what you're gonna come home to. My dad's been real sick, and I'm not gonna damper this interview, but kind of a funny story, a little bit, I guess. New Year's Day, he collapsed in my parents' home. Well, ironically, in North Olmsted, where I live. My parents live 7 houses down from us, so I could see it. I could see an ambulance in my parents' yard. I'm like, son of a goddamn, So I go run down the street, and they're taking my dad out of the house. And for whatever reason, maybe because it was the middle of winter, they put the freaking white cover all the way over his face, like there was a dead body. They're wheeling a dead body at my parents' house. I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. Then also, excuse me, but yeah, so all of a sudden, my dad pulls back the thing. Is like, oh, hey, boy. I'm like, what is going on, So, yeah, when you walk into those situations, you never know what you're walking into. But, kind of get...
It's a blessing, and you're right, and it's, it's, I guess, comical, quote, unquote, like you kind of described it, Vince, but they just did the same thing to my mom. She had fallen a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
She's coming home tomorrow from about 3 weeks at Dignity Rehab, a great facility, though. Get your walk-in and stuff again. And the gurney comes in, and just because they were kind of straightening things out, at one point they had the sheet up as well. And I was like, it wasn't the paramedics, pardon me. It was because it was a plain white van. Okay. Which is what I saw my dad transported out with when he passed a few years ago. And so the sheet comes, I look out in the driveway, and I was like, Mom's okay, but I'm just starting to bawl. And,
sure.
My wife, Fernanda's like, what? I go, that's my dad. And she knew. I mean, she knew where I was and what was going on, but yeah, that's a visual I hope and pray doesn't come anytime soon for any of your loved ones or anyone's loved ones, especially with the pandemic going on right now. No rush to hear any of those stories. Praise be.
No doubt. So, to get things back on track, talking about sports, man, that's us. I've known you for quite a few years now. I feel comfortable telling you shit, so all good. All right, so talking about sports, though, I have my feelings on GSP, and we're gonna get to that later. I feel he's the greatest. I know you believe, Anderson Spider Silva is the greatest, and we're gonna get to that in a bit. But, so not only have you seen them perform, but before you even got into MMA, I mean, holy crap, do you have luck? So you cover the Russian line, you announce, commentate for the Red Wings, I want to say in either 96 or 97, the famous Russian line, and then the Bulls. What are your some of, because I know you can pick a ton, but only pick a couple here, I guess. What are some of your favorite memories of being around the Red Wings and the Bulls, both during amazing, amazing periods in franchise history?
Well, for the Red Wings, it was their first Stanley Cup in 42 years. So, I mean, that was the dream season to get the dream job. And I'll give you a quick five. I'll do the quick version, which is difficult for me, as you know, but I will. First would be the celebrity golf tournament was scheduled the day after I got hired. They flew me in and they wanted me to get out there and start meeting some people and, getting acclimated. And as I pulled in with my car, because I'd moved from Chicago, I pulled into the parking lot at the golf course. In my car, this big Lincoln pulls right next to me, and the trunk pops up, and this older lady gets out, good-looking older lady, and then this gentleman gets out from the other side, and it's Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe, and it was Gordie and Colleen, and I just was like, wow, because I watched Gordie at the Olympia when I was a little kid when we lived in Detroit, but it's Gordie Howe. And I just introduced myself, and I was going to do TV with Mickey Redmond. That's Mike. Welcome to the Red Wings. And I'm like, I get chills just telling that story. I'm like, God, wow. In the trade on pretty much opening night was the three-way trade that brought Brendan Shanahan. The day after Christmas. So this was back when the NHLPA hadn't mandated that you couldn't have a game before, the day after you couldn't travel, that kind of thing. So the day after Christmas, which for Canadians, is Boxing Day,
sure,
we had a home game in Detroit against the Washington Capitals, and nobody wanted to go to the rink. I mean, it was the day after Christmas. We didn't want to go and do a game, and, I'm sure the boys, were fine. But it turned out that it was a 5-4 overtime win for the Red Wings, with Sergei Fedorov scoring all 5 goals.
Yep.
So what was a day when I didn't really, one of the few days I wasn't pumped, turned out to be one of the greatest days of Red Wing history. And I remember it was just crazy. And the Russian 5 was before, the tragic accident with Vladimir Konstantinov. And, I mean, Fedorov, all 5 goals, including the game winner in overtime. So that was one. I got to call the Darren Mccarty revenge fight on Claude Lemieux.
Yep.
96, Claude cross-checks Draper from behind. Plus, Draper's drawn about 18 places. Not only is he a teammate, but DMAC and Drapes are extremely tight. And sooner or later, you knew Darren Mccarty was going to find Claude Lemieux. And it started with Larry Onoff in Forsberg. Then Waugh and Vernon go storming out. They meet at the red line. And then Darren Mccarty comes around and he finds Lemieux. And he just beats the crap out of him. Took him by the jersey, slid him into the exact spot on the boards at Joe Louis Arena where Claude had cross-checked Draper from behind a year ago. Slid him right there. Claude goes right off the ice into the locker room. The Joe goes crazy. The caveat to that is my partner, Mickey Redmond, loved a good Donnie Brooks, still does. But back in the day, that was when we didn't do a lot of up and down interviews. So Mick would go down with about 2 minutes left in the period to get ready to do the in-between, the intermission interview with one of the Red Wing or one of the opposing players. Mick was still smoking back in the day, so sometimes, Vince, there might be 6 minutes left in the period. And I'm like, what? All right, but I'm here, if I were a 2-time 50-goal scorer for the Red Wings, maybe I could take 6 minutes off as well. But Mickey missed the fight, Vince.
Oh,
because
no.
he was en route walking downstairs. So when you listen, like on NHL radio, 30 years ago today, it's me.
Yep.
It's me calling it by myself. So, that was amazing. And then the Stanley Cup run was obviously special. They beat, my Flyers, which was kind of crazy. So bittersweet, but of course I was rooting for the Red Wings. And then the biggest moment would be one of the biggest moments of my life. I got to drink out of the Stanley Cup, and Hall of Famer Larry Murphy held it for me. And I had some, I don't know if it was champagne or beer or a little bit of both, but I drank out of Lord Stanley's Cup. So those were the highlights of my year in Detroit. It was very special and extremely cool to call the Russian Five, to watch the way they move the puck. Very cool that Sergei Fedorov had the white Nike skates back then, and he was mentoring, I guess was the word. Was it Anna Kournikova, the really cute Russian girl?
Yeah, and she's like,
tennis player.
She was like 16.
She was around a lot too. Yeah, that's about what she was, Vince. She was about 16. And so they were chaperoning her.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, I hope they were, because you and I have kids and daughters, so I hope they were. But yeah, that was part of it as well. So it was a fun time.
No doubt about it. And as we've said a lot in this industry, right place, right time. And if you have the talent, anything could happen. For you happen to be in a situation where you get a call and say, hey, we need you to get to Japan. First, we need you to take a jiu-jitsu class. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was jiu-jitsu. Get your ass to Japan, wear a nice suit. We got this opportunity with you, SEG, the UFC. And when people, and I'll have you tell the story here in a second, but when people go back and watch that Ultimate Japan, the debut of Mike Goldberg with the UFC, a couple things stand out immediately to me. One, it's pitch dark in the back. You could barely see any of the fans. The way they did that lighting that night, it was so dark. But also in Japan, that's the way they did it. And also, they have such a respect for MMA and also professional wrestling in Japan that it's quiet until something happens. And that's not a sign of disrespect. That's not a sign of people sitting on their hands. It's the exact opposite. They're intelligent fans who know when to cheer, know when to be excited, and it's just the way they go about it. It's truly unique. I used to love when they would go to Japan for that aspect. But Mike, I'll have you tell the story. How did that all come about? Because it's pretty crazy how it went down.
Yeah, it definitely was a journey, and MMA was certainly an accident. It really was. So I did my time at the Red Wings and went to did a season or two there, and then I ended up in Chicago at Sports Channel, or Chicago Sports Channel was prior. Sorry. Because that was 89 to 94. So I was there for the first three titles. And so if you want to know what I experienced there, I can tell you this. Everybody who's listening to me being on your podcast right now watched The Last Dance.
Yep.
Well, this is what happened in my life. I lived the first 7 episodes. So that'll tell you every story you need to know about how fortunate and blessed I was. I lived the first 7 episodes, especially those Knicks series, which were outstanding.
Wait, now hold on, though. Hold on. Wait, Goldie, I got to cut you off real quick. Now, here's the $1 million question before you get back to it. $1 million question. If your former college mate, Ron Harper, covers Michael Jordan, does the shot still happen?
Does the shot still go in?
Yes.
It has a lesser chance of going in than it did with the defensive mismatch of putting Craig Elo on Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And you know what? Nobody should be dogging Elo. Nobody should be dogging Elo. They should be talking about why Ron Harper wasn't D'ing up on Michael Jordan. And, I watched Harp. We lived in the same dorm. We went to Miami in the same years. He schooled Lenny Bias, the late Lenny Bias, of course, in the NCAA tournament. Miami lost in OT to Maryland in the first round that year, but it was a senior year. Hart goes 7 overall to the Cavs. Doherty was number 1 under Wayne Embry, a Miami guy.
Yep.
And Hart was amazing offensively as well, but his D was as good as any in the league. Then he goes to the Clippers and he blows his knee out, and then becomes a bit of more of a defensive specialist. But I will tell you straight out, the reason that Ron Harper became a Chicago Bull eventually is because Michael Jordan said, and I quote Jordan, "Nobody has ever D'd up on me like Ron Harper. I think we should have him on our side." Yeah. So that's the respect that, Michael had for Harp. And then obviously Phil fell in love with him as well. And Harp got to get some more hardware after that. But, the story of Ron Harper, and none of the big schools taking him because everybody thought he lacked a major gap of intelligence when really he had a speech impediment, and he got great attention to it at Miami. So he goes to a mid-major, and he still turns into, obviously one of the best, Ohio kids to ever play in the National Basketball Association. But to have all those rings and have the career he did, it's a great story for the kid who started, in Dayton, Ohio. It's another good Buckeye story for certain.
No doubt. And sorry to cut you off, though. I knew that story was golden, and I wanted you to talk about it because it's just, to me, it was just huge. But yeah, so back to the
UFC. I can see their shot, man.
Oh yeah, I
can see it, and so can every Cavs fan. Forever, I guess. They can also see the drive and the fumble and all of those great things. But
yeah, and I love Lenny Wilkens too. So I love Lenny Wilkens, right? But I'm watching that episode. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like when Ron Harper says, "I was supposed to cover," I'm like, son of a bitch! Like, let the guy cover him.
And I used to listen, to Joe Tate was the man. I used to listen to Joe Tate when Lenny was playing, and then Bingo would hit, would hit a long jumper. Bingo from 14, bingo! So, I was a Cleveland basketball boy with no basketball in Cincinnati. At that time, the Royals were, long gone. Yeah. So I liked my Cavaliers before I became, a Bulls guy, obviously, because I was working for the Bulls. And then, I can say that I dated a girl from LeBron James' alma mater. They didn't go to school the same years, obviously. Yep. But, St. Vincent, St. Mary is well represented. I got to tie in to that as well, not just King James. All
good, man. So go ahead. I've now cut you off 3 separate times. You're golden here. So
that's all right.
SEG, UFC.
Yeah, I go to ESPN. I get an offer to do play-by-play at ESPN, which is why I left Sports Channel and after the 94 season, so the first baseball season for Michael. And I go to ESPN, and my major assignment was the NHL on ESPN. I was on the number 3 team with Brian Engblom. And that was when, my favorite team ever, Gary Thorne, Bill Clement, were our number 1 team. Tom Meese, died tragically, in drowning in the pool years ago. One of the originals, Tommy Meese and Darren Pang, were the number 2 team. And then I was on the number 3 team with Brian Engblom. And I worked with a guy as a producer named Bruce Connell. Yeah. Well, Bruce's father, Scotty, would be on the Mount Rushmore of ESPN. Scotty is a broadcast Hall of Famer. He was one of the founding fathers and one of the guys really responsible for putting the entertainment sports programming network on years and years ago. And thus they ended up with a family production company as well called Concom. Well, Concom had the broadcast rights with SEG. Bruce back from New York got a job at NBC in New York, so he couldn't freelance anymore. And you did it pretty well. Bruce Connell said, Goldie, got a gig for you. It's in Japan. They're going to pay you this. Got to take a jiu-jitsu class. I'm like, cool. I'll go to Japan. And it was awesome. And I was told in advance, though, about the fact that the Japanese fight crowd, Japanese MMA and wrestling crowd, is very much like center court at Wimbledon. Mm-hmm. So at least I wasn't in total shock in that regard, but I was in shock when Olympic gold medalist, Michigan State Spartan Kevin Jackson got submitted in about 20 seconds by Frank Shamrock, because of course as a Big Ten guy, I didn't know Kevin, but I was already kind of giving a little love to the Sparty there. And it didn't go well for Kev. But then that was the first of, probably about 250 UFCs, 3 or 4 years with SEG. And these guys from Zuffa come in and purchase a thing. And we had a bunch of us guys from SEG that were able to make the transition over. then we had this dinner in some back room in this Italian restaurant, not realizing at the point that, I knew I was having dinner with these dudes who had money. I didn't realize they were billionaires.
Yeah.
And they asked if we had any questions. And I just asked Lorenzo, I said, hey, will we ever be on like a billboard at the airport at McCarran or a billboard here in Vegas? He's like, absolutely. That was my expectation. That was it, Vince. I was like, all right, cool. I'm in. All right, game over. And, man, what it did and what it has done, and the sport that has been just magnified and justified around the world is amazing. And to be the soundtrack with Joe, they really taught the sport and helped people to understand it and legitimize it in their own minds, make it mainstream, is truly an honor and a journey that I know is a special one that nobody else will ever experience. We were the first. We were the first to take this sport from, two men will enter the octagon, only one will leave, to legitimate, world-class athletes that train and diet and do everything at the top level of any athlete in the world and compete at that level as well. It's unbelievable to be able to be part of that journey, that's for sure.
No doubt about it. And, two-part question here for you as well. So, I've watched everyone, and I love MMA. I love the sport. I think it's one of the most beautiful sports in the world when you understand the true aspect of it. And the one guy to me who really set the tone, who you started off working with, a guy by the name of Jeff Blatnick. And I would advise all of our listeners, the late great Jeff Blatnick. This guy, he knew his stuff, and he was legitimate as legitimate gets. Look into his history, phenomenal. And my question to you, kind of two-part here. So you go, number one, first and foremost, how was it working with Jeff Blatnick? And number two, transitioning from Jeff to Joe Rogan, you seem to have instant chemistry with Joe. Why was that?
Well, to work with Jeff was, an honor. And the two guys who basically, took me into a big ballroom, and John Mccarty drops to his back and says, come on in, kid, jump down here. And I'm like, yo, dude, I'm a hockey player. Like, whoa, this is jiu-jitsu. What's going on here? And of course, Jeff is sitting there laughing. And Jeff Blatnick, a cancer survivor, and then going on to win an Olympic gold medal as a heavyweight in Los Angeles. I mean, it's an amazing story, and he was a guy who brought that great knowledge, especially from the grappling aspect. And the grapplers were dominating back then, Vince. And Randy Couture beating Maurice Smith in that main event of my first show. Yep. It's a perfect example. Maurice Smith, world-class kickboxer, didn't get off many strikes because Randy smothered him. He used his Greco. Then he used his freestyle. He put Maurice on his back. He beat him up a little bit. He pinned him against the cage. He wore him out, and he walked away with the belt. And then, you had great heavyweight champions who were spectacular wrestlers at Ohio State. The late Kevin Randleman, the godfather of ground and pound, Mark Coleman. The Hammer and I were. It's actually funny. I was looking back at some stuff, and I did this interview with a guy named Mike Holcomb, who wrestled at Miami of Ohio. And one of my questions to Mike was, and this is student TV, and how about this freshman, Mark Coleman? So freshman year, Coley actually went to Miami, and he and I talked about it. Then he transferred to the Ohio State. And just that I had asked that question so many years ago, it's like, wow, that's crazy. Because Coley and I are a month apart, our birthdays, even though he looks 10 years older. He's been in a lot more fights than me as well. So having Blatz next to me and having him just, bleed wrestling and understand grappling, understand position, which helped Jeff understand the jiu-jitsu game. And Big John's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and Jeff and John, their relationship was rock solid as well. And so Jeff was, kind of being tutored and mentored in the grappling aspect of it to the submission aspect of it, and the jiu-jitsu from more the plain wrestling, if you will, and the embrace the grind, like my buddy Michael DeSabato would say. So he was able to capture that as well. The one mistake that I made that Jeff was very quick to point out is I once came on the air and I said, "Hi again, everybody. Mike Goldberg along with the former Olympic gold medalist Jeff Blatnick. Great to be here." Exactly. And Jeff goes, we get to break. Jeff goes, "Goldie, I love you, but you're never a former gold medalist." And I was like, oh, shit. Yep. No, you're not. And I have never made that mistake since then. And it's funny because some of the scripts I would get during my UFC days, those combo features, sure, might say, former Ultimate Fighter winner, Michael Bisping, da-da-da. And then I went, wait, no. If you win the Ultimate Fighter, you're not a former Ultimate Fighter winner. You're Ultimate Fighter Season 5 winner forever.
Yep.
Like Olympic gold medalist. And so I used to always change the copy and do my ad-lib and take former out. And that goes back to when I said former Olympic gold medalist to Jeff, and he reminded me that nobody came and took his medal anytime lately. So he's still a gold medalist. Yep. And then Joe Rogan, man, just brothers for life, and very much the same in our energy and enthusiasm, and enjoyed being around each other. I used to go to Joe's comedy shows almost every Friday to kind of have my little comic relief, if you will, before the big day of fights on Saturday. And we just grew on each other's excitement and enthusiasm and passion for the sport. We had that same passion for the athletes, passion for the sport, and belief in what it was becoming. And so that special ride that I talked about, Joe's on it as well. And we just had something that very few have, and the ones that do are considered the all-time greats. I mean, I've had people in broadcasting say that Joe and I, we're like the Summerall and Madden, or are the Summerall and Madden of MMA. Absolutely. And Joe is pretty, vocal that he doesn't watch any other sport. So to him, he's like, oh, well, I don't know what that means. For me, that is the ultimate compliment that anybody could give a broadcaster like you and I, especially when you look at the relationship between Summerall and Madden, where John was the guy, boom, 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 and Pat he was play-by-play, but Pat played the game. So Pat could have gone in and done a little bit of that play-by-play with a little bit of an analysis thing, but he didn't. And he set the table for John, and he made John Madden the star, and he understood that they were a team, and they succeeded as a team, and that's what Joe and I always had. I always wanted to put Joe in a place where he would shine as brightly as he could, which wasn't difficult with Joe because he's so outstanding, but I always knew my placements. And if it's, throw a long pass and, scramble to get it away, I could do that. But if there were nights when I was just handing it off or pitching it, I was cool with that too, because I was having fun. I had a great job. I had the best seat in the house, and I was doing the show with one of my best friends in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I grew up with Summerall and Madden, and there's on now, my favorite combo now, there's really two of them that I think are both excellent. People here in Northeast Ohio, for whatever reason, they have a lot of hate towards them, and I'll never understand it because I think they're both phenomenal. One, my all-time favorite, Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth. I love Collinsworth with Al Michaels on Sunday Night Football. I think they're excellent. And the other is Aikman and Joe Buck. I think Joe Buck is terrific. He took a lot of shit from fans up here in Cleveland because, he was the voice of the Cubs winning the World Series against the Indians. And,
right.
What people need to realize out there is the announcer has zero control over the outcome of the event. No matter what it is, the commentator has zero control. But I know what you mean. Like, you had that specialness. I know Al Michaels wrote a phenomenal book. I would advise anybody to go back and read that book by Al Michaels. Just tremendous stuff there. But I wanted to ask you this. I've known you for a long time now, and this is something I've never asked you, but I think it's important. And because I've talked with Gray Maynard, I've talked with Sean Shirk, talked with all these guys, and we've talked about this subject, so I'm going to throw it at you. Can you ever talk about a time where you number one, you had to miss a show because you were unbelievably sick, or you had family issues going on that you just couldn't control, like it was a family emergency? And number two, more importantly, quite honestly, was there ever a time when you were sitting there and you knew to yourself, there's no way in hell I should be sitting here right now. Number one, I'm too sick. My son is sick. My daughter's sick. My wife's in labor. Something nuts. Were you just ever there, but knew to yourself, shit, like, I really shouldn't be here, but you were just so damn afraid of getting in trouble or losing your job or just, being punished in the egotistical world that promoters could have sometimes?
Well, the one show, and it's actually the one anything that I have ever missed in my entire career. The one anything I've ever missed was the UFC when I got sick and there was, a lot of stupid shit written about it. But I basically had run myself down. I was going through a tough separation that ended up, with, divorce a little bit later, which happens to people. It's all good. We had a ton of shows. So I was on antibiotics, and then I was on such heavy antibiotics, I would get thrush, and thrush is basically a throat infection. So I couldn't talk. And so then I go on a different antibiotic. The moral of the story is that, prednisone and everything trying to keep me healthy is I was a mess. I was a mess from exhaustion, and I was a mess from fighting a lung infection too aggressively for what you just talked about. Not the fear of missing a show, but the fact that I don't miss shows, and it doesn't matter. I make it happen, and that's the way I'm built. That's the way, Coach Cushman, who just passed, and I was just in North Olmsted a few months back, as you know, for Crash, and that's what Ian and John Erickson taught us, man. It's, we couldn't throw some dirt on it because we played hockey, but we did something, wipe the blood on your jersey and get your butt back out there.
Yep.
That's the only show. That's the only time I've ever missed anything. No, I always knew that. Well, wait, there is one other one that I will get to in a second that I was nervous about. So everything else in between, I always knew when I went to work, I was doing it for Kiera and Cole. Now, I was fortunate when Kiera was in theater that she'd always have two shows on Friday, 2 shows on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. And if it were a 3 a.m. flight, I'd be home for her show on Sunday. Tough missing some of Cole's hockey games, some of the big tournaments. I had to miss a state championship semifinal game that my assistant coaches screwed up because I was at a UFC in Seattle. Obviously, we lost that game, and it wasn't my fault because I wasn't coaching that day. I'm glad you said that. So 2 years ago, our team, our junior Sun Devils team, Cole is the captain, we went to nationals. We made our way to nationals. We won our state. We won our region. And we were going to nationals. And it was Cole's first experience going to nationals. He had gone to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, but many years prior. And it was my first experience as a coach. And trust me, it's a lot more than just Cole. These kids I had coached for years and years and years, they're all like my sons, Vince. And we had a Bellator in Budapest, Hungary. And I hadn't been there that long. Mm-hmm. But I've been there long enough because all my bosses, not Scott Coker, because that's a new relationship, but all the guys on the TV side are the same guys I worked with on Spike when I did the UFC there.
Sure.
And I just said, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime thing, and I got to do this. And so I talked to Scott Fishman, my boss, and he was like, Goldie, I think you should. I agree with your decision. I think you should. And then they were having a little trouble finding somebody to do it. Sean Grandy, who had done Bellator previous to me, who was a great play-by-play guy, obviously has done radio for the Celtics for years. Sean was able to jump in and do that show and save me. And it's funny, he said he did it as a fellow dad. He did it so I could be with Cole because he knows what it's like. But like Big John kind of said, Goldie, you might want to go to Budapest, bro. the fish is stressing, not at you, but he can't find anybody yet. It'd be good brownie points. And I'm like, man, I can't. And long story, a little shorter than it could have been. I ended up going to nationals, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life as a hockey player, as a hockey coach, and obviously as a hockey dad. Cole had some snipes. Our team advanced to the semifinal round. Eventually got beat by a team from Maine who went on to win the national championship. And everything went great in Budapest. And the next show that I had in Bellator, everything was normal. And every single person, and John Norton, my producer, two of his brothers played in the NHL, and John played at Maine. Actually, he was still playing at Maine when Paul Correa was a freshman. So Norty is a hockey guy, but all of them as dads said, Goldie, I'm glad you did what you did. I know you were nervous about it, but I'm glad you did what you did. So yeah, I was a little nervous to ask, but I'm glad that I did. And I think I would have really, really, had a black spot in my heart for the rest of my life if I wouldn't have experienced that trip to nationals with my son.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's when you know you're working with a good company, to be honest with you. You work around good people who don't make you feel guilty for that kind of stuff. That to me is a big deal. Now,
Scott Coker, sorry. And I went to Coker as well, not just the TV guys, because I'm new with Coker, Vince. And so I want Scott to know that I'm committed. And Scott's text back to me was, Goldie, it's all about family, the Bellator family, and of course your family. Go get a national championship, bud. Right. Awesome. There you go. So I want to make sure that, I also included what Mr. Scott Coker, my boss, said, which was outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's a good feeling. I've done clearly much smaller scale with everything I've done, but I'll never forget, the first time I was going to cover UFC. And for me, that was a big deal. I had to cover high school state championships and MMA finals and all that stuff. But to me, though, the UFC was the creme de la creme because it's just something I love so much. I had never missed anything. I've never missed anything since, but I'll never forget it because it was in Cleveland. Go figure. Here we are in Cleveland, Ohio, UFC, I want to say 203, I think it was, 203. Stipe's in the main event, all this good stuff. CM Punk, all that shit. But we get to, we get to the undercard. We get to the Teenage Wastelands playing, and I got the goosebumps. I'm like, I can't believe I'm here 10 feet away from the cage covering this fight.
I saw that sign announcing on, Teenage Wasteland.
Yeah. Well, it's just... I'm just goosebumped, and have a heart on. Yeah, and I'm like... And then I look down at my phone, and right as the opening match of the main card, Jessica Andrade is coming to the ring, and, I remember the song was playing, I remember all of it, like her entrance music, the whole freaking deal, dude. I look down on my phone, and it's my wife, she's in labor. Get your ass to the hospital now. So, obviously, I'm not going to miss that. I get in my car, I drive there and everything, but, yeah, it's like, when you really love to do something, and this is what you want to do with your life, you got to play through sickness, you got to play through illness, it's just, you do whatever it takes. So, I think that's very important, but I wanted to ask you again, and this is something... I think you got to do both.
I think you still got to get most of the experience, so...
Yeah.
Worked out all right. It was nice of your wife to hold off labor for a couple of hours so you could go down to the start of the show.
Yeah. At least. Yeah, it was good of her. I walked in, she had the baby like 6 minutes later. She had it at 11:54 at night. I'll never forget it. And my buddy's calling me, and he's like, Stipe won. He's like, he was getting choked out, but Overeem and let go of the hold, and it came and knocked him out. And I'm like, dude, I got my fucking newborn in my hands, like right now. Like, all good.
I took Coach Cushman and Coach Erickson down to weigh-ins the day before because I knew they would. And Mr. Erickson really watches a lot closer than Crash did. Mm-hmm. But of course, they know what I'm doing, and they're fathers to me, and I'm a son to them. In fact, I did the speech in the honoring at senior night for Coach at the rec center in the same exact spot where my dad used to announce my games growing up, which, so in between saying the right thing about this man I loved in Ian Cushnan and think about my dad, it's like the double tears that I'm holding back as I'm trying to properly honor Mr. Cushnan while thinking about my dad standing literally where he was. But the day before, I took the coaches down, and then they sat in the truck and saw stuff. And I remember Coach Cushing said to me, he goes, "You know what, Michael? Everybody you work with likes you."
Yeah.
That's how Crash was. And that was the guy. He would always say he was an into the bencher in the NHL. Well, he played on a team when there were 6 teams in the league. So the bench wasn't that long, Mr. Cushing. So Crash, give yourself a little credit, but he never would. But that's the way he was. And Mr. Erickson was cool. He wanted a picture with Uriah and this and that. Well, Jessica I's my girl. I love her. And gave her a hug, and then I gave her another hug, I guess. And as I was leaving, I gave her a hug, and we went back to the hotel. And Keith's been my brother's best friend, good North Olmsted kid. Mm-hmm. Keith was driving the coaches back to North Olmsted. And Ian looks at me and he goes, "Michael." Yes, coach. He goes, "Who is that girl, that fighter, the one from Cleveland?" And I kind of look at him. He goes, "The one you hugged 3 times." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm like 53 years old, and he still knows everything. I can't pull anything off on the mat." And I was just like, "Oh my God, seriously, coach?" I was busted again. It was hilarious. I go, "Her name's Jessica I, coach." "All right, Michael. All right, thanks." I'm like, how in the world did he see that? He's the master. He's the master.
That is hilarious. So another question I've never asked you. I know you've gone on the record now, talked about it a few times. Shortly after that, it wasn't another 90 days, and all of a sudden the news broke. And I mean, and again, man, I'll tell you, the Lord works in mysterious ways that you got to do that show. You know, because again, it wasn't 90 days later that all of a sudden, you know, you're no longer with UFC.
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and it's just you know, and they never addressed it to the point where I felt as a journalist, even if I didn't know you, dude, even if I hated your guts, all right, as a journalist, I thought it was bullshit the way they handled all of it, and I thought to myself, I'm like, this guy has been with this company, you know, whatever it was, 15, 20 years, has been through all these things, and then you don't even give him a send-off. It really pissed me off. For you, how hard was it? It was kind of like, okay, Ronda Rousey gets knocked out by Amanda Nunes. Oh, by the way, goodbye Goldberg. Like, what the hell happened?
You know, it's interesting, as there was talk of the sale, my mom would ask me a lot, and she never really, it was my dad I spoke to, you know, about work all the time. But my mom would kind of throw out there once in a while, like, "Michael, how will this ownership change affect you? Like, what will this ownership thing do?" And I kind of looked at her, not arrogantly, but I just kind of said, "Mom, Joe and I have been together a long time, and I don't think you try to fix what's not broken." Well, fast forward to the sale and the first interest payment for the new ownership. Oh, yeah. William Morris IMG was $170 million. So basically about 150 people starting at the very, very top, working their way down way too thoroughly, were let go. Some of the jobs were absorbed within, you know, the new ownerships, different companies and departments, but guys like Tom Wright, the former commissioner of the CFL, who was running UFC Canada, was let go. Marshall Zalesnik, who now runs Glory Kickboxing, and was a huge pay-per-view guy when the UFC was blown up on pay-per-view, was let go. And I was let go as well. And it was very financial. And at the same time, my relationship with Lorenzo was rock solid, and we understood each other, and I always delivered the messages that I was asked to. And so even with everything going on financially, and obviously many people thought other things, and I wondered myself, Vince, at the time, if it was just financial. And I've had people tell me that on the inside that it was. You know, if Dana and I were best buds, could he have saved me? Perhaps. At the same time, they were looking at the bottom line. They were just looking at spreadsheets. They didn't care about names. And I wasn't shocked, because I got the call early December. And I want to say I did 4 shows after I knew that I was going to be done after that fight UFC 207, and it was kind of ballsy by them, because I could have just went on a. I mean, they would have turned my mic down pretty quickly, but but I didn't. I didn't, because that's not who I am.
Right.
I said my goodbyes, and the hugs, the tears. That's the tribute. By not getting a proper quote unquote send off, tribute, thank you on the television production, I received 100 times, 1,000 times more love, praise, and appreciation via social media or friends or who. I was trending. I'm like, my sister-in-law goes, "You're trending." I go, "Well, I wish I was trending for something else, but wow, I'm trending." Like, so I got all that, and that means more than somebody putting together a feature, which would have meant a lot, trust me. But that means more. And it was awkward for the UFC because I was high profile, and I think they were somewhat trying to downplay it, and not make a big deal about it and move forward, if you will. And so going back to Tony Orlando, so I go upstairs after the show and all the hugs, and and I'm numb at that point.
Sure.
And I just don't know what to think, and then I don't know what my next job's going to be or when it will start. And there's a sushi restaurant at the MGM that I went up and met Tony Orlando and John, his son, and a couple other people there. And Tony gets up right away, and he big Greek, handsome dude still, that big ass mustache, and he gets right in my face, Vince, and he goes, "Michael, I want you to know something, and I want you to remember this because it's very important right now." And this is Tony Orlando, and he goes, "You are the brand. The UFC is not the brand. You are not the UFC. You are the brand." And now he's holding my cheeks, like literally, Vince. He's holding my cheeks in that, Greek Papa way.
Sure.
And he's looking, and he is freaking looking me in the eyes. He goes, "You are the voice of MMA. You are your brand. You are not just that. And this is going to work out." And he went on, and I was like, wow. And I have heard since from numerous people that have talked to Tony directly that he's still pissed off at what happened. And he has vocalized it like legitimately saying, "Mike Goldberg's the man, he da-da-da-da-da. That was the worst move the UFC." And Tony's said that to people. And so now I'm like, "Hey, Mom, Tony Orlando's still on my circling back, right?"
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Tony... And it could, whatever. It didn't have to be an athlete, Vince. It was a man who was a freaking icon. Tony Orlando was iconic, and for him to care and to look at me like a father figure, and I mean, like I said, in that Greek way, and grab my cheeks and give me a kiss on the cheek, it was like, wow, things are going to be okay. I don't know when they'll be okay, but when he stopped talking to me, I'm like, things are going to be okay. And I probably, right after that, ordered a double. Pretty sure I got a double after that.
No, that is so awesome. My next, got a couple questions left. Not too many more, just a couple more. But my next question was, what made you sign with Bellator? And before I ask that though, two things jump out to me, which I think is hilarious. Right after that happened, number one, the UFC is in Arizona, I want to say, or maybe California. They were at Arizona, right?
Yeah, it was in Phoenix.
Yeah, a fucking dude, like 2 weeks later, and they're scaring the crowd. Holy fuck, there's Goldberg. I'm sitting at home like, what the fuck?
So I wanted to go because BJ was fighting.
Yep.
BJ's my boy, man.
Baby J.
Even though Baby J, exactly. I'm the only one who called him that. I'm the only one who called him the prodigy as well. But, we can, it's a tongue twister, Prodigy's a hard word sometimes.
Yep.
Or at least it was that night. But Baby J was training at my buddy's gym during the week, and I spent time with him. And I wanted to go and watch Baby J. Well, I went with my master Paul McGowan, and we were up in a suite. And as it got closer to BJ's fight, well, it got Master, like, people saw me kind of walk in. It was extremely fresh, obviously. It was basically the next show.
Yeah.
And one, ironically, that I wouldn't have done because it was a fight night, but still it was the UFC in Phoenix. And Master said, you should walk around the concourse. And I'm like, Master, but the humble part of me, Vince, is going, no, you know what? I'm good. All right. And you know what? It was, going back to the tribute, it was remarkable because in my mind, every person who came up to me, I was thanking them as well.
Sure.
And that's how I took it. Thank you for the honor of that. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for enjoying it. Thank you for taking the time. And then I get down near BJ's fight and Master goes back to the suite. I go, I'm just going to try to get a seat. So I do the old, like, where's the usher? I sneak down into this row of seats, and these dudes look behind, and I go, is anybody sitting here? And I go, no, I think you're good. And then they look back again, and they go, holy shit. So I'm starting to watch the fight, and it's like, all right. So BJ's coming up. One of the cameras is shooting towards me. Now, Anthony Giordano is our director. He's my boy. I had dinner with him the night before. I know the whole crew. Full truth, Vince, I thought that they were in commercial break, and the boys saw me, and so they got the camera on me, and I gave them the shaka bro to say hi to everybody in the trucks. Well, that was not the case.
No.
Of all the people, they cut away, and there I am doing the shaka. So in the truck, there were a lot of WTFs going on.
Oh, sure.
Then supervising producer is going to Anthony. Did you know he was here? Did you know that was him? Anthony's like, no, he's supposed to be in a suite. Are you here? And Dana, the bat phone's ringing. Like, people are going like batshit crazy. And it really was just one of those. It was 1 in a trillion. Mm-hmm. It was 1 in a trillion, but it was perfect. And it was awesome, and I was giving love. BJ got the shit beat out of him by Yair, which sucked. But yeah, that was crazy. A total coincidence, and it was me being the guy in the cheap seats sneaking down to the good seats for the main event. Literally, I was that guy, and they got that shot of me, and I guess that shot of me might have been a shot back at not getting that nice little feature. That vignette done when I was done with UFC. Maybe that was God's way of giving me a chance to dig them back.
Oh, I think so, man. My face is hurting from laughing so hard. I almost shit myself.
Funny.
I did. I had like my newborn baby in my arms who was like 4 months old, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, holy shit! I'm like, this can't be. And then the other time was in Buffalo, so it was only a couple months after that. I went to go cover the show in Buffalo, and I'll never forget it because the main event was Rumble Johnson versus DC, and DC beat him, and then Rumble Johnson took the mic, announced his retirement, which to this point he stayed true to his word. He hasn't fought since. He announces his retirement, then he gives you a shout out, dude, on the live mic in front of everybody. I'm like, that is sweet. And then it took everything I had in the post fight press conference not to ask Dana about that because it was on the tip of my tongue. I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, he's very vengeful. So if I say anything that pisses him off, there probably goes my credential for any other show. So I didn't ask it, but on the tip of my tongue so badly did I want to say, hey, when can we expect Goldberg to be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame? Like, it was right there. But I was like, it's so out of place, even though Johnson put it out there, don't do it. But for you, when you heard about that, how good did that feel?
Dude, I didn't hear about it. Well, first of all, I heard about the Phoenix thing because I thought it was on during break. And then, like, my phone starts blowing up. So that was funny. I was sitting and watching because those two fighters are also two of my favorite people.
Yep.
Rumble and DC. Love both of those guys. Always had a great relationship with Rumble, and was with Rumble more years because obviously Daniel was with Strikeforce and Coker and then made the way over. But, you know, great relationship with DC as well. Like, love them both. So I'm sitting on my couch, and it was like I got hit by a train. Sure. And it was a good train. I could not believe it. Like, I believed in our relationship. I know how Anthony and I feel about each other. People are probably going, who's Anthony? Anthony Rumble Johnson. Sure. How AJ and I feel about each other, Vince. But, man, I sat there on the couch, and I started crying. And I also thought again, what kind of tribute, Goldie, do you want for your 2 decades at the UFC? Anthony Rumble Johnson did a pretty good job in a matter of 15 words on that night in Buffalo. He said a lot that came from a lot of people. And it was really, really special. I was on the couch watching it, and I was blown away. And I just burst out in tears. Like, it was just such an honorable thing to do and just meant so much. And I texted him later, and he goes, dude, you know me, man. I only speak from the heart, and I love you. And I was like, I love you too, bud.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And I'm sitting there as a Northeast Ohio guy, you know, someone, you know, number one, I consider you a friend. Number two, we went to the same damn high school, 18 years apart, but I won't bring that up. But, you know, so I'm like, holy shit. And like I said, the whole time, I'm like nudging the guy who was with me, you know, my partner at the time with the company. I'm nudging him. I'm like, should I say something? Should I say something? He's like, no. He's like, shut up. He's like, it's not worth it. I'm like, I so badly want to raise my hand and ask him, but I was like, it just ain't worth it. But, you know, everything leads to good stuff.
You were right. There's some things that happen oddly there for no apparent reason. So
as good as
I'm glad you didn't get yourself in trouble. As much as you love me, I'm glad you didn't get yourself in trouble. You might have just gotten, Mike Goldberg was never my friend. You're not my friend. Why?
It is.
So, you made the right choice. You made the right choice.
It is what it is. I didn't want to accidentally commit suicide or anything. You know, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Subject for a different day. But speaking of the coronavirus, no. Anyways, so hey, look, you're with Bellator now. It all worked out. What can we expect from Bellator coming up? It's been a good ride so far, but now they're coming back. MMA, Mike, I could tell you right now, you know, Goldie, more than ever, MMA is peaking. People are loving our MMA content. Right now is getting more hits than it ever has with Keon Sports. I don't know, you know, maybe it's only the dog out there right now, but whatever it is, people are really grasping to it because they have nothing else to compete with at this point. There's nothing else on, and I think people are finally starting to get hooked on it. What does Bellator have planned for us?
So we're coming back after 5 months off. Now, much like the early show that Dana talked about, Fight Island, way back, it didn't happen. You know, anybody who knows anything about anywhere and anyhow knows that was a Disney decision as well.
Sure.
We're owned by Viacom CBS, and so there were certain really high precautions taken, and I think there should be. I just did a home COVID test about an hour before we started talking, and it's off in the FedEx, and you know, I've got to be negative before I can even get on the plane, and then we'll be tested there. But here's what Bellator has for the future. Viacom has invested the money the past few years into getting fighters, getting top fighters, getting the rising stars, the right contracts to keep them in the right promotion, which is Bellator. And at this point, I will put our top 5 in most divisions against the top 5 in any other organization in the world. Now, since everything has gone down, CBS and Viacom got married again, which opens up CBS Cable, where during our time off, we've had a bunch of replays. Bellator's had a ton of replays on, you know, the CBS Sports Cable side, which is amazing. It opens up opportunities for multi-tiered programming, CBS, CBS Cable, CBS Online, maybe some Paramount, much like the UFC did with the Big Fox, FS1, FS2, and so on. So it opens up that opportunity. So basically, in summation, what I'm saying is that the roster is in place. The television outlets are in place. And now is time for Bellator to become a regular event that people know is always going to be there for them. If it's every other Friday or every 3 Fridays, and everybody needs to know where it is, because when it changed from Spike to Paramount, the demographics of that station change. And so those promos do a little bit less, at least from a TV side. Now, if you're an MMA fan, you're going to find us and you're going to find great fights. So we're in a position now to put together a consistent schedule of outstanding fight cards and build on that and put it on multi-tiered stations and productions. Viacom owned Pluto TV. Bellator is going to have its own 24-hour channel on Pluto TV, which, by the way, is free. You download it on Apple TV or computer, whatever. It's free. Pluto TV is owned by Viacom. And so all of our Bellator stuff is going to be on there. So people are going to have that, equivalent of UFC Fight Pass, but they're going to have it for free, which is outstanding. And so, not to go back to Wall Street and Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, we're going for the big time. We're going for the majors here. Bellator's legit, and Bellator fighters are legit, and the top ones are as good as any in the world. And we're going to be able to showcase them consistently. And we start next Friday with a good, solid card with Aaron Pico on it, with Ricky Bandejas on the card, who, of course, had the big head kick knockout of James Gallagher, who's truly a star for us right now. Sergio Pettis, Anthony's little brother, looked great in his Bellator debut. He's fighting Bandejas basically for the #1 bantamweight contender spot, which would be outstanding. And then our fight card 2 weeks from then is headlined by the rematch between Michael Chandler, multiple-time world champion, and Benson Henderson, multiple-time world champion. And there's no love lost there. And Benson doesn't dislike many people. I've known Benson. I went to Benson's wedding. He pretty much loves everybody except Michael Chandler and a couple more people. But Michael Chandler is what he does not like. And so that's what we have coming. And I'm excited. Our production team's excited. We miss the excitement of the sport. We miss doing what we do for a living because we love what we do. And we miss the camaraderie. And it'll be 6 feet, between us as we have camaraderie. But I can't wait to get on a plane Monday and head to Connecticut and get ready for our show on Friday. I can't wait. It's been way too long since my last show, February, in Dublin, Ireland. That's for certain.
No doubt. Last question for you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us here. You are listening to... Yeah. Oh.
Eagles are orange, baby.
Hell yeah.
Not green.
OH.
You make sure you let you make sure you let Maynard and Palmer and all those dudes know that, because I do every time I see them.
For sure. Maynard was awesome. He went off for like 95 minutes. It was just amazing.
He's awesome. He's a good dude. I love him.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean,
he's a good Sparty. Rashad Ivan's roommate in college.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they got a story on there. Freaking hilarious. I'll post that underneath this one later. It's hysterical.
I'm sure.
It's freaking hilarious. So, last question for you as we look forward to the Bellator future here, and to me, it's a bright one. And it's ironic because we mentioned Japan earlier. I think the first freaking question out of the gate was about Japan and fans not cheering and stuff. So I think I know what it's like. I've been in I don't want to say arenas, maybe nothing that big, but I've been in gymnasiums and stadiums where it's been awfully quiet and it could sometimes throw you off. But in this development and the way it's going to be, I think you're going to be fine. But anyways, that's not even the question. So the question is the glory years. All right, I've been binge watching like crazy. I've watched the first 89 UFCs in the last 3 weeks. I bought the series on DVD, like the first 200 on DVD. And I just been, because I work from home, so every day I'm just binge watching as I work. And
so you watch me age drastically.
Yeah, pretty much. You look younger. I'll say this now. I'm not, and I'm not kissing up. So I'm on UFC 89, right? And And because I think Brock Lesnar is about to take on Randy Couture for the title in like two more fights here. But you know, you look younger now. Like you look in better shape now. Now we're the wheels are way off the cart, so I'm just gonna go for it. You look in better shape now than you did back then. What are you doing? Like, what's different now? Because you legit, man. I'm not kissing ass. You know me not to be a kiss ass. You look much better now. What are you doing?
Just better diet, better exercise plan. Understanding that you got to keep your youth because, you know, HD turned into 4K and who knows what's coming next. And, you know, that really, really is a bummer sometimes if you had a rough night. So, no, I'm a professional is the way I would put it. And so I try to treat my body as, you know, as well as I can during my time in between. I always do the best to keep my voice where it is because that's how I support my family and make my living and, you know, love my life. And I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Sure.
You know, having a wife now a few years younger than I am keeps me running. And I still play men's league, and my son's on my line. He never passes me the puck because he's a little shit. But it's also because he's usually top of the circles, and I'm still in a neutral zone trying to catch up. So it would be offsides, in all fairness to Cole. But I appreciate that. It just better overall, and you know, a little bit. Of course, I'm sure I've been there, done that as well. Went through my years where. You know, I was working all the time, and so I wasn't staying on a good routine. I wasn't eating well, and wasn't giving myself time in between days and nights of fun, and you know, more of the beer with the boys during my hockey days. But yeah, I'm trying to stay mean and lean, and 56 in November.
Yeah, looking good, man. So here's the actual question after, you know, 5 minutes of bullshit there. So the actual question was this. I've been binge watching like crazy, getting my Matt Hughes, my Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, all the legends that we all know and love, Baby J, all of them that we know and love. Who are the guys now in Bellator? When you think we're going to look back from now, 10 years from now, we look back and say, wow, these were the 3 or 4 fighters that truly put Bellator over the top. I know I love Jake Hager. He's one of my favorites also because I'm a pro wrestling junkie, but you know, is he going to be one of the guys, or who do you believe is going to probably be the 4 or 5 guys from Bellator that we're going to look back and say, wow, those guys put them on the map, even more than they already are?
I can get you this. And Jake hit me to do that promo for his AEW, man. Yeah. I thought I was just doing like a quick hello, and man, they got a lot of use out of it, which is kind of cool. So it was kind of funny. He's a great dude. First kid that comes to mind, AJ Mckee.
Okay.
AJ Mckee, 22 years old, never been defeated. His father, Antonio, is his trainer. His father, Antonio, fought in the UFC. I called the father's fight, and now I'm calling son's fights. So that's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. AJ Mckee would be the first one that really comes to mind as a young guy that is establishing himself. The greatest fighter in Bellator right now, who's not talked about enough, is Douglas Lima.
Sure.
And if you watch the last couple of UFCs, if you watch the last UFC that was welterweight heavy, Joe and the boys did talk about Douglas Lima about 100 times.
Yeah.
And, by the way, I called Diego's fight in the UFC. So Douglas Lima would be a guy right now that's amazing and not talked about enough. We've got, champions in different organizations like Gegard Mousasi. Obviously, a lot is being talked about when you look at like Gegard Mousasi, or you look at other champions that fight in an organization like, Henderson, Ryan Bader, and the success he's having now. But when I look at people that are truly going to put us on the map, Michael Venom Page,
sure,
the Brit, a little bit of Anderson Silva in him when you look at the body style. Michael Venom Page is a ton of fun to watch. He's a just tremendously talented striker. I mean, you could even say he's a little bit like, the man who basically took the throne away from Anderson Silva. And so he's one to definitely keep an eye on. Keep an eye on James Gallagher. He is the guy at SPG. And if you've got John Kavanaugh's belief, then you have a chance to be one of the greatest of all time. I wonder what is going to be of Logan Storley, 5 times, I think 6 times state champion, the way they do it in North Dakota. Amazing wrestler at the University of Minnesota. Very young in his career right now. But with those type of wrestling credentials, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what he develops into. Aaron Pico has had a really rough start as a pro, but he might be one of those guys who opens 5-5 and then wins 17 in a row. So I would look at him as another one. And I'm trying to get you a wild card here. I'm trying to look at somebody who's really an up-and-comer on our roster that would be considered a wild card to some other people. Here's one. Maybe Roger Huerta will reestablish himself, which would be kind of cool. Everybody knows the story of Roger Huerta. And, I would say watch those guys closely and watch some of these guys like Vadim Nemkov. We have a handful of guys, Vince, that all train under Team Fedor. And the great Fedor Emelianenko treats them like family. And they are tough dudes. And that's actually Bader's next fight at 205 against Vadim Nemkov, Bader's guys. So watch those Russians that come out of the Team Fedor camp. But the one I would think about first would be AJ Mckee. And with my love for a guy like Anderson Silva and his style of fighting, MVP, and Douglas Lima's already, a superstar. He's a star.
Yeah, I agree completely, with most that entire list, especially Lima. Lima's a guy that they don't talk about very much, so when he got mentioned last week on a completely different program, I'm like, that's sweet. Like, that's a guy who could absolutely do it.
They could have said Bellator champion. I mean, I'd say UFC, UFC, Sergio Pettis, younger brother of former UFC champion, man. They're not going to get tongue lashed, but you're right. They did talk about him a lot, and deservedly so. And he trained with Brian Stanton for a long time. So Lima is definitely a guy that I'm glad that they did talk about, because I would put him up against any welterweight in the world.
Well, yeah, and don't insult the fan. That's one thing I've always learned. Don't insult the fan. Don't treat them like, hey, we are the only organization in the world. And a lot of promoters, they need to understand that. They need to realize that. And that is definitely something I've always said. Give the fans some credit. Don't speak down to them. Don't pretend like you're the only game in town. Yes, it's no good for business. If you mention the competition too many times, I get all of that. But this is a different world we live in now when it comes to fighting. And nobody wakes up, you see the shit on TV, it's not real. Like, you don't wake up, go to the fighter house, and all of a sudden you're this Ultimate Fighter star. That's not the way it goes. All these guys have to start in the indies and work their way up for the most part. You see this Dana White Contender Series, you see all this shit. But at the end of the day, there's more than just the UFC. So, absolutely, that's another reason I'm glad we had you on. I think you guys are doing great things. So glad that you're back. Want to wish you nothing but the best of luck. We'll talk to you again soon. And one last thing about Aaron Pico. If you go back and listen, totally different fighting style, but if the fans want to go back and listen, 2 weeks ago, I think it was like Father's Day weekend, we had on John Fitch. Well, if you look at John Fitch's career record, he started off 3-2-1. 6 fights in, the guy was 3-2-1, went on a freaking tear where he won 17 straight before he ran into GSP, which everybody ran into GSP back then. So, with Pico has all the skills necessary. I think now, honestly, Mike, now a little bit of the pressure is finally off of him a little bit. We might now finally see what he could do without all the hype behind him and all that pressure. It's like a hitter. Sometimes if a hitter starts pressing in baseball, I know you love baseball like I do, when a hitter starts pressing, maybe they go through a little slump. You never know. The talent doesn't leave you. Sometimes it's just about confidence. Would you agree with that a little bit?
Absolutely. And, when you're hunting a knockout, you're putting yourself in a great position to get knocked out. And I love John Fitch. He's one of my favorite people in the world. He's a good Big Ten guy. Walk on at Purdue, ends up being team captain, fights for us at Bellator. And you want to talk about embrace the grind. I mean, that's a dude right there. But Aaron Pico, and no disrespect to John Fitch or anybody else in the world, Aaron Pico started traveling the world at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, wrestling, boxing, everything. I mean, Freddie Roach has been in his corner. Aaron Pico has it all. Aaron Pico could end up being on the Mount Rushmore 2, if you will, someday. So, and he's on the card next Friday. So check it out live on Paramount Network because Pico's back, and this will be his first fight since he's made the move from Antonio McKee's body shop in California to to Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn in Albuquerque, and working his striking with Brandon Gibson and the boys. So Pico, we will see how he has changed. And I'll leave you with one last thing, because this is one thing, and part of it is because he's my friend and he's a great guy, but it pisses me off when people don't give Ryan Bader credit for the 2 belts that he holds in Bellator. Mm-hmm. I'll leave you with this. 5 career losses. John Jones, a young Ryan Bader, lost to Tito Ortiz.
Yep.
He got knocked out, ran right into the wood chipper, if you remember what I said, by Lyoto Machida.
Yeah.
Lost to Glover Teixeira and Anthony Rumble Johnson. That's it. So don't tell me that this guy is not top of the food chain and that he had to go somewhere else to be a champion, because that is BS, and that's my soapbox, and I don't go on many of them, but that's today's soapbox, brought to you by, I don't know, Irish Spring.
And at the time, and fans, go back and look at this. At the time, Machida was one of the best in the world. Everybody kind of maybe they forget about it, but I'm telling you right now, man, look what Machida did to Tito Ortiz way back when, and look what he did to Rashad Evans. I mean, he took Rashad Evans to made him look like a damn slinky with how he bounced backwards. That guy was that good. Yeah, I agree. Maybe it just, I love wrestling. I love amateur wrestling. I just, for whatever reason, I seem to get behind those guys. I was a CB Dalloway guy, same deal. And it was, to me, quite frankly, I think Bader, it doesn't matter that he's in Bellator, he was going to peak when he was going to peak. And now that he is, to me, it's total bullshit. Like you said, if anybody tries to knock him down a peg, it's ridiculous.
His life changed when he landed that knee against Alir Latifi, because if he would have lost to Latifi, he was going to be in that, oh man, now I had some fights that I had to grind out, a bad fight against Phil Davis, etc. And a loss to Latifi may have cost him his job. He knees him, and he gains a whole new sense of confidence and belief in that split second, and takes it to Bellator, and just not beating people, has absolutely mauled and dominated great fighters. I mean, dudes like Litton Vassell, who's built like a freaking heavyweight, and I know Ryan got up to 240 for the heavyweight tournament, needless to say, but Ryan Bader gets the praise, and Ryan Bader's right there with the best of the best.
Absolutely. Goldie, want to thank you again. I will definitely talk to you soon. I'm sure that test is going to come back negative, so you enjoy that show in a few weeks, actually next week. And you, obviously, man, you got a first-class front row ticket on this show anytime you want it. Thank you.
I appreciate it, to a fellow Eagle, anytime, Vince.
You got it, man. And your mom's in my prayers, okay?
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that.
Talk to you soon.
See ya.
So that was Mike Goldberg of Bellator. Awesome stuff all the way around. Definitely, a mentor in this business for me personally. Someone I've leaned on for advice over the years. And just a really good person, and someone who does it for the love of the game. Obviously, everybody gets paid. No one's saying that they do it for free. But, this guy could be doing hockey for a living easily with as much as he knows the game. But, puts his life, his career into the hands of the very unpredictable world that MMA is, and just does a tremendous, tremendous job with it. Fellow North Olmsted Eagle, that is what it is. Totally awesome. Was there tonight. 4. Our guest tonight, thank you, Mike Goldberg, Keon Sports, thanks you as well. For Mike Goldberg, for Keon Sports, this is Vince McKee. Everybody have a safe, fun night.